Good evening. One of history's worst mass murders occurred here in Austin today. There are 16 dead and 33 injured.
The phone rang and I answered it, and it was a dispatcher. He says there's been a shooting up at the university. Blood all over the place. Went up to the observation deck. There's a lady that was a secretary, I suppose, who had killed her, shot her with a shotgun.
Welcome back, Blue Grit family. I am Tyler Owen.
Clinton McNear.
How you been, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. How was your, well, you stayed in Austin last night.
I was here overnight.
You've been in the area for a couple of days now. How does it feel to be an Austinite for 3 days?
It feels good, man. I hadn't even 3 days here. I haven't been a victim of a crime yet. I'm shocked.
Really?
Yep, not yet.
I was almost this morning. Panhandler was trying to get me some money there at the corner, but I just passed on through.
Just keep on rolling.
Just keep on rolling.
He didn't know you're East Texas hood rat.
He didn't. I'm a Yankee. For y'all that don't know, I was referred to as a Yankee several episodes ago by my good friend, colleague, and companion Clint McNear because I live north. What did you say of the
north of I-20?
Yeah. So
Yankee.
Still kind of coping with that, and been through counseling, and I think I'll kind of get over it. But I'm making it. I'm settled down in Wimberley, Texas now. For everybody that has asked where I settled in at, so
where I stays now is Wimberley.
Where I stays is Wimberley, Texans, is where we stay. That's the mascot, by the way. The whole town's, it's just consumed with high school football. So
that's a good thing, man. That's a good place.
So don't call me on Friday night. Yeah, do not call me on Friday night because I will be at the game. So
that's why I am flying out of here as soon as this ends to go watch Forney Friday Night Football.
They're the Jackrabbits, right?
The fighting Jackrabbits.
Yeah, Texans are better. Just throwing it out there.
Not Cottontails, Jackrabbits.
Oh, that's cool. All right. Welcome our guest.
We have on a cool story that I've been waiting to get to share his story with you guys for a while. Waymon Lewis.
Yes.
Glad to have you on, sir.
Glad to be here.
Welcome to the Blue Grit stage.
What'd you tell me last night? Better to be seen than...
Yeah, it's better to be seen than observed.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
We're going to dive into his story in a bit. We'll build a little groundwork, lay a foundation before we dive into it. But Mr. Lewis was Austin PD back in the day. And as far as I know, the United States' first mass attack or mass shooter, mass murder at the UT Tower. But we always like to start off with, who in the hell is Waymon Lewis? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Tell us who Waymon is.
Yeah, I was born, in Lampasses, Texas. It's about 70 miles north of here, and went through kindergarten and high school there.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, it is.
He's soft-spoken. He's gentle.
It's all the years working at Austin PD.
So grew up in Lampasses.
Yeah.
Born there and spent your whole through high school.
Yep.
Life was different back then, I'd imagine, than the current times. I would think.
Oh yeah.
Just a little bit. You could probably carry a gun in your shotgun rack at school, and.
Yep. Yeah, it's different. For sure.
In Lampasses, a little bit fortunate. Marble Falls and Fredericksburg are kind of blown up, sadly, but Lampasses has not had that yet.
A little over 6,000.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
What was life growing up in Lampasses, Texas? Play football, play sports?
Well, I played junior high and freshman year, but then my father wouldn't sign the papers, and the coach, he says, you need to get in there and play, and I said, well, I'd love to. He said, I've got some connections up at Howard Payne at Brownwood. Probably get you a scholarship. So I went back home and told my dad, he's afraid I'd get hurt. So
Wouldn't sign off on it.
no.
Man.
Yeah. But I probably wouldn't have met my bride if I'd have
There you go.
gone to Brownwood.
There you go. Your high school sweethearts?
Oh, no. I robbed a cradle.
It's always good to get them young. It's always good to get them
Statute of
young.
limitations is over on that, so you're good.
Yeah.
We've been married 56 years.
That's awesome. It's awesome. For you listeners out there that are in law enforcement, having a supportive spouse, as Waymon can tell you, so important. So congratulations, you guys.
And sadly, 50-year marriages, 55-year marriages are the anomaly now, whereas back when we were young, that was the norm.
Yeah.
Most people were married and stuck through thick and thin, and bless you guys for the relationship you guys have had for 56 years.
Working shift work, at the police department, and then later on IBM. She would show the kids pictures of me, seeing their dad.
This is the real guy. I promise. This is your dad. Yeah, we understand. Believe us.
So, graduated high school. Where did Waymon go to then?
I went to it was Nixon Clay Business School here in Austin, and then I joined the Guard in '64, and went to Fort Polk,
Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful metropolis.
Yeah, pine needles everywhere.
Easy.
East Texas boy that
Yeah.
hurts his feelings.
And then was stationed out at Fort Bliss in El Paso.
Another beautiful metropolis.
Yeah. Man, the military loved you.
Yeah,
How long did you do in the Guard?
7 years. No, it's 6 years.
What was your job in there? What was your MLS?
Well, it changed. I started out supplying transportation, and I was MP at one time. I was in a commo section one time, and it's varied experiences and not much training, for each one of them. But you are one today.
Yeah.
So,
So,
what years were those that you were in the service?
64 to 70.
Okay.
all your family kind of have a military history, or is that just something you decided you wanted to do?
It was during the Vietnam War, so you didn't get much choice.
Yeah, go do your time.
Yeah.
Was serving as an MP, is that what kind of gave you a taste of law enforcement, or did you have family in law enforcement?
No, didn't have any family in it. I was working for my father, who was a contractor, and I was wanting to establish a retirement and steady pay and that kind of stuff. So I was going to go to try to get into DPS, but they were not having a cadet class for several months, and they didn't have a program where they would, put you on different jobs until it started. So I went and visited the Austin Police Department, and they had a program where they could put you to work, and they were fixing to start a cadet class.
Was Austin always known? And I mean, I'm 38 now, or well, I guess I'm 39. I got reminded that the other day by my wife. Have they always been known as a very elite or superior agency within this area for their benefit package and their pay? Because they certainly are now. I mean,
Yeah, I can recall Sergeant Fisher when he retired. Their retirement system was not anything good. I mean, rumor had it that he got food stamps,
oh wow,
and so after the state took it over, it's superb.
so you got in it before TMRS did, I guess. Wouldn't that be right, Clint? I guess.
Yeah,
Yep.
Wow.
such thing.
And having great benefits and all of that is relative. Last night we were at dinner and all of us were talking about how difficult law enforcement is now, and nobody will apply to do the job. And I said, yeah, there are several handfuls in Texas where you can be a police officer, and in 5 years you can make $100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And people are still not applying to do the job. Nobody will do the job.
That's a clue, right?
And would you say you thought your first take-home pay was roughly?
it's $300-something a month.
Wow.
Austin Police Department, $300-something a month.
Man,
you some
I'd
of
give
that,
anything to
baby.
get that paycheck right now.
Get you some of that.
Get it
buddy.
framed, right? That's insane. Wow.
And their retirement wasn't any good, but since the state took it over, I've still got friends that have been there, and I know one guy, he ended up retiring with like 103% of his salary.
Yeah.
Of course, he stayed there a little bit longer than he had to.
Right. I would have too for that much.
Yeah.
So what year was that you reached out to Austin? You were looking at DPS and then reached out to Austin PD. What year was that?
1966.
And got hired before a cadet academy started?
Yep.
And at that point, Austin still they ran their own academy, and DPS ran theirs. Because I think at one point I'd heard that they had ran one in conjunction with another, but I haven't confirmed that.
No, it was individual.
Okay.
I was in the 30th cadet class.
Wow.
So what'd you do between hire date and going to academy cadet class?
Well, I probably was doing construction more than likely.
On your own or through
Through
the
my dad.
department?
No, with that.
Okay. Well, like Dad got hired, I think in '67. He was 20, and they didn't have an academy, so he had to drive around and check on houses where people put in vacation requests. He would have to drive around and say that he was looking at houses.
But they had, a program where you could work as a dispatcher. You could work in the jail.
Oh, yeah.
You could work in Central Records.
So how old were you then?
22.
And how long did you have to kind of fly in a holding pattern until you went to the academy?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 months is about it. I was pretty fortunate.
Okay. What was academy back then? How long?
If I recall, it was about 90 days or something like that.
Wow.
And that's probably long, really, for the other majority of classes the academy's going on, quite honestly.
Yeah, we have guests on that said they got hired and they were pretty much told, here's a badge, go catch bad guys.
Set forth and conquer, right?
Yeah.
We had Rhonda Lord on. Shout out to Rhonda Lord, and he said that they had guys that had to go back to the academy. I mean, even after being a cop.
Oh, when they
Really?
Yeah.
when they came out with like T-Cole and made requirements for academy training, officers had been on the street like 5 or 6 years. They had to go to a police academy.
Can you imagine that?
Goodness.
The bitching and griping that happened there in Griffin? Yeah.
Imagine how boring it was.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure.
You got a guy in the crowd knows more than the instructor.
Yeah.
So went through the academy 90 days. What part of the year? When was that?
I think, I'd gotten out of the academy and had to go to summer camp. And
Oh, that's right. I remember you.
And whenever I got back, I was commissioned, and 2 weeks later, Whitman got his own tower.
So you leaving the academy, going to FTO or hitting the street was delayed 2 weeks going to summer camp to the Guard. Was there an FTO program when you came back from your summer camp? They assigned you with someone?
No, I was a commissioned officer and put you on the street.
Here's
There
a
you
car,
go.
go get
Yeah.
after it.
Yeah.
And so now we have FTO, so I'll spend 3 months in a car riding around with an FTO, and they're shadowing me, telling me, showing me how to write a report, how to make an arrest, how to do this. You just kind of fend for yourself, or did you depend on senior officers to kind of guide you? Or?
No, you did what you had to do. That's about it.
Wow.
I was, whatever you call it, FTO. I had several guys that, I had responsibility for.
This is years after you became a cop.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
So on-the-job training is pretty much you had whenever you graduated the academy. They said set forth and conquer, and your commission, go do your thing.
Well, we'd ride every now and then with somebody.
Right.
But it was a good academy. Learned a lot.
I'm sure.
And that was summer 66?
Yeah.
I think that's a song. Isn't there a song about summer of '66? They could have been writing about it. Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
If not, we can write it.
We damn sure can. Before we dive off into the really the big story that we're going to talk about today, as a kid in Lampasses, did you hunt a lot? Did you have a lot of exposure? Okay. Was that a common thing that y'all?
Well, I've had a real good friend that his dad had leased places and ranch, and his uncle and did deer hunting and raccoon hunting, jackrabbit hunting.
So me handing you a quote unquote deer rifle, what we all common do, it doesn't matter if you're hunting deer or not. It's not, your way around it.
Well, when I was in basic training, I qualified with an M14.
Open sights though.
Yeah.
With no scope.
Nope.
Okay.
Scope's a luxury.
But I had a lot of experience shooting, at varmints and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just wanted to touch on that before we
Yeah. No, it's a great, that's a great
delved
question.
into into the story.
Yeah.
So you've been on the street 2 weeks, out of the academy. On patrol. What kind of car were you in? You remember? What squad
Kind
cars?
of car. It was a
Please say Ford.
Plymouth.
Plymouth, like a Fury.
I don't think it's that nice. Probably a Belvedere.
All right. Driving around on patrol, and for our listeners, clearly there was no cell phones in the 60s.
It was before cell phones. It was before any kind of handheld radio or anything.
And even for our young officers that are out there, there was no handheld radio. So
Nope.
when you leave your car,
You lost communication.
you're done.
Yeah.
Your communication with anybody
You,
is zero.
You did what you think you needed to do, and it was quite interesting.
So summer 66, you're driving around in your Plymouth, 2 weeks on the job, got the world whipped, big police in Texas.
You know what shift you were working that day?
It was working day shift, and I had been investigating a collision.
Okay.
I was working downtown. I was working a shift that had 3 different areas, and that particular day I was working downtown. And I went into our showdown area.
Briefing.
Yeah, and gave them the phone number back there where I was going to be, the extension, because, like I said, you didn't have any radios or
Right.
anything. And so the phone rang, and I answered it, and it was a dispatcher. He says there's been a shooting up at the university. He said you need to go up there, but that's the only information I had.
And what time frame? So this day shift, midsummer. What was that patrol shift like? 12 hours.
I was on traffic at one time and patrol, and if it was patrol, you get off at 3, 7 to 3.
Okay. Do you remember what time that phone call you got about the shooting?
Yeah, it was probably about 1:30, I guess.
Okay.
1.
Okay.
And I went up to the university, and there, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a crosswalk from the student union building over to where it goes up to the mall. And that was the only parking. There wasn't any other parking spaces. So I went and parked in that crosswalk and stepped out of the car. I had my shotgun and my pistol, of course. And one of the kids, which I was a kid myself, but, one of the kids says, you might want to get out of there. He's already shot several people right in that area.
So when you're driving there and the only information you have is there's been a shooting,
Clearly,
you're not thinking mass murder. You're
right.
thinking somebody shot somebody.
Yeah, it never had happened before.
Somebody shot somebody.
And we're speaking of University of Texas at Austin, just to be clear. That way, our people who don't know about this story,
Hook 'em, baby.
God.
And you stepped out of the car. You had probably a pump 12 gauge.
Yep. I had a 12-gauge shotgun and my pistol. And after I was told by that individual that he had already shot some people there, I hopped in the car and put my shotgun in the rack because up in the tower it wasn't going to do a whole lot of good.
Did he tell you that he was in the tower?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could hear the shots.
Okay, so you're at this point. You're on scene. Somebody tells you he's already shot. So you're starting to kind of connect the dots. So, oh shit, this is a guy that's in the tower shooting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And your handgun's probably a Smith & Wesson 38.
Yep.
2-inch barrel or something, probably.
No, it wasn't. It had about a 4-inch barrel.
All right, getting out there, dirty Harry size.
But whenever I moved my car out of the way, I was approached by a young man, and he says, "Do you want a deer rifle?" I said, "Yeah, sure do."
And there's no SWAT back then.
No SWAT. They didn't have any kind of weapons or anything. What they had was some old Skaggy rifles that they'd seized, way back when. And I told him, I said, sure. And he says, well, I've got a 308 with a 3-9 variable in my Volkswagen over there. I said, well, let's go get it.
And this is just a civilian. You have no clue. He's just offering his deer rifle.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was the manager of the chicken place up there. And he had a box of shells in his 308. And I told him I would be in the architectural building. And he says, well, if I go get another one, can I shoot? I said, sure.
Oh God, this is awesome.
And he was in a Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah. And he shows up in the architectural building, and he had a 308 with a 309 and a case of shells. I said, oh, my goodness, here we are. You know, be able to hold them off for a while. And there's old-timey windows in that building, and they'd roll out. And there was pupils inside, and I told them to stay away from the windows. And one of them had a transistor radio, and apparently one of them had a camera. They took a picture of me whenever I was firing out the window, and I had a piece of newspaper that I stuck in there to protect his weapon, you know, from the metal frame, and then also to maybe hide the silhouette of me being in the window, you know, and maybe that would confuse him. But
so how old are you at this point?
how old?
Yeah.
22.
You're a 22-year-old kid, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
2 weeks on the job,
Yep.
which, you know, you don't even start really processing how to become a cop till about 10 or 15 years in.
Yeah.
And this guy's looking at like, oh, he's a uniformed cop. He's probably thinking, hell yeah, let's get after it. Hands you a rifle, which that's random in a sense anyway. And you have the fortitude to realize that I need to get higher ground and do all that.
Yeah, I went to the second floor of the architecture, which it's the highest floor they had then, and I guess it's still that way. But the transistor radio that the kid had, I think it was KNOW perhaps.
When you're talking about the kid, you're talking about the guy that gave you the rifle?
No, I'm talking about one of the kids is in the building.
One of the students had a transistor radio.
That's how you realized what was going. That's how you were keeping up with everything.
Well, yeah, because the radio announcer apparently had the advantage of seeing where he was shooting from.
Okay.
And in the architectural building, I could see the west and the south side of the tower. And of course, before we all got there, what he was using, there's a ledge about 18 inches wide all the way around the tower there. And he was, using that as a stand to shoot. And after, people started returning fire, he had moved down and started shooting out of some drain holes. There's 3 drain holes on each side of the tower.
Kind of look like gun ports.
Yeah. I mean, it was not designed for a fortress, but it sure was effective for it.
Right.
So, hang on, I want to back up a sec. 22-year-old kid stepping out of your police car, and you could hear rounds. Did you realize it's probably rifles?
Oh, yeah, you could tell.
Big, loud crack,
Yeah.
that's a rifle.
Yeah. And the policeman that was killed, he was on my shift, Billy Speed.
2 weeks on the job, you've been through the academy, but that's like saying, well, you did driver's ed online. You clearly know how to drive. You know in theory what to do, but you don't know how to do the job. Did you know the campus well enough to know that, let me get in the architecture? What made you get in the architecture building?
Proximity to the tower.
What made you take newspaper and think that I better not silhouette myself?
I was, as a picture that I have that the kid did, or the pupil, he could definitely see you, and I thought, well, I put paper around the gun and in the window, and it kind of hide my head. And so,
but he's such a good man. Did you catch the part?
Yeah, exactly.
Why he put newspaper under because he didn't want to.
He didn't want to scratch
the
that man's rifle. Yeah. That's mind-boggling to me. I always think about others. That right there is the definition of servant. So from the time that you got out of your car to where the shots are ringing out, what was that time frame as far as you starting to actually engage?
it seemed like an eternity, really.
Right. So you really don't know because this dispatch probably isn't, for you listeners out there that are 25, 26 years old that work at Plano PD, Garland, Grand Prairie, even Austin PD now. We always depend, and you may have been off patrol at that point in time in CID, but I would always, when I'm working like a traffic accident, I would need to get times or even like a major shooting, I would reference back to dispatch and say, okay, well, at this point, this is when this call was dispatched, and I could. Y'all don't have that shit back then.
No,
What was my arrival time? What was my
Yeah.
Well, there was so much activity. That,
Right. Right.
There's like they didn't have time for that.
So the transistor radio that the student in there had, the DJ was.
I don't think it was a DJ. I think it was an announcer that, they could see, where he was, and that's whenever they would announce it, south or the west side. And I told that gentleman that I used his rifle. I said, when they're shooting from the west or the south side, I said, I'll start at the left, drain. You start at the right, and we'll meet in the middle and see if we can get a ricochet shot. At that angle, you couldn't see, anybody in there because it was such a pronounced,
Right.
angle. And we'd place our bullets, and you can see some of the old pictures where not necessarily my shots or his shots, but people were hitting the building.
Were there other officers or even civilians involved or engaged in returning fire back to the tower, or was it just you?
There was several, people. And DPS had, arrived, and there was civilians shooting at him. But you couldn't see where he was because of the angle, and hoping to get either ricochet or stuff in his eyes or whatever the case may be.
So we'll lay over some of the photos and stuff for the listeners to be able to understand what you're talking about. But those gutter drain holes that you were trying to place rounds into that were essentially a fortress with gun ports in it, you can see them in photos, but how big?
I would say that it's probably 6 to 10 inches wide and probably 12 to 14 inches long.
It's a little bit bigger than a football.
Yeah.
And so
he was shooting out of them.
And you're on a second story shooting up there, basically trying to put rounds in a football?
Right.
Good God.
And there was one time that we were firing there, and I noticed in my scope on the south side toward the east end of it, there was a rifle that was laying on the ledge. And I told that guy, I said, look, I said, when they're not shooting up there in him, I said, let's see if we can hit that rifle. And it was shot a few times, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. Well, later on, years later, I found out why it disappeared. The feeder tube had been hit, and it knocked that rifle out of commission.
Which is exactly what you were trying to do.
Yeah, but I'm not saying I hit it. It wasn't. Somebody did.
Yeah.
I would think that there wasn't a lot of people with the forethought to think, if I can at least get one of those weapons out of battery and limit. I would imagine there wasn't a lot of people with the forethought to do that.
Well, you didn't know how many weapons he had up there, and that might have ended it all right then if you could, knock that one out. But of course, he had several weapons.
How long do you think from the time you arrived until, I guess not really the all clear, because there was no real communication to tell y'all there was an all clear?
It's probably an hour and a half or 2
God
hours.
bless.
And I don't know.
In the architecture building?
Yeah.
Do you know about how many rounds did you think you fired?
No, I didn't.
A lot.
Yeah. Every time he was on the west or the south side, I would,
Crack
at
around
least two rounds.
Wow.
And he would shoot the other. But I went back up in the tower after, and I don't know how they knew where I was because, like I said, there was no radio. There was not any kind of muster point, if you will. And you just did what you thought you needed to do. But some student came up there, later on and said they want you to come to the tower, to help secure it. Well, I handed the guy his rifle back.
Appreciate you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I went over to the tower and didn't take the elevator all the way up. You know, you never knew what door open up there was. But going up the staircase, and he had killed a couple of people, you know, in that staircase, and it was just blood all over the place. And went up to the observation deck, and there's a lady that was a secretary, I suppose she was, and a receptionist. He had killed her, shot her with a shotgun, and blood all over the reception area. And later on, you know, in a few minutes, it was kind of all clear he was going to go out there and recover his body because he had been shot with buckshot by one of the policemen that went up in the tower. And lo and behold, walk out there and there's still bullets flying around hitting the wall.
Shit.
You know,
Yeah.
People weren't able to get to notice that, you know, he was out.
They didn't know the war was over.
Right.
So I said, it's not worth that. So
He's good. He's dead. I'm good.
I went back inside and waited to see if, you know, they were going to quit shooting.
So we had dinner last night, and we were talking about some of it. And one of us asked, do you know who the kid is that handed you the rifle? And he goes, no. And I didn't intentionally ask because I didn't want to know.
There was felonies being committed, but I didn't want to expose him to any of that stuff.
And there's in the photo, so the photo that we'll show of you sitting in an architecture building, if you're looking at the photo, the unknown civilian, your partner, your sniper assistant, he's sitting to your right.
Yeah.
He's shooting out a window.
Yeah.
And then between y'all on the floor was the case of shells he came back with.
Yep.
And you never saw him again after that day.
No, never did.
You know, a couple episodes ago.
I didn't want to look for him, you know. I mean, it's...
Well, but to experience something like that with another human being, to see the devastation that was caused that day, for the most part, I mean, you're from Central Texas, Austin. You know, the bell tower of Austin, the University of Austin in Texas, is just it's an iconic figure. To experience something that tragic, you know, we had talked about, you know, Guardian Angel with Aaron Slater's episode. You know, you never know. You never know who or why God puts people in places, and I mean to have a rifle like that in downtown Austin, you know, it's just.
Well, he had heard about the shooting, and he came down there to see if he could help.
Right. But to have two rifles,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, no, I don't know. There was a sporting goods store that was right across, I think, about 22nd Street in Guadalupe, CNS Sporting. And I don't know if he went and bought another rifle or borrowed a rifle. You know, he was in that same locale as far as businessman. And I don't know if they loaned him one or what.
But you think about the series of events that occurred. You've been on the job 2 weeks, don't have the training to go through something like that. Luckily, you're in the Guard, because if you hadn't been in the Guard, have been exposed to some of that,
Yeah.
you may not have had some of the tactical mindset to
Right.
think about it.
Right.
But then you showed up and somebody tells you don't park there. Two people have already been parked there. Then some unknown guy driving a sweet Volkswagen Beetle has a rifle. If he hadn't had that, you wouldn't have had a rifle.
No. Would have had to depend on shotgun and a pistol.
Which is ineffective. You might as well have been
Yeah.
shooting spitballs up there.
Yeah.
There's a damn good chance you took one of his weapons out of battery. You or somebody did,
Yeah.
which probably slowed down the effectiveness of his assault.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole series of events that day that are crazy, because if any one of them hadn't happened, everything could have changed differently.
Right. Right.
Because you showed up to a sniper fight with a pea shooter, basically.
Yeah.
And there was just a whole series of events. There was no SWAT back then. And for our young listeners, law enforcement listeners, SWAT came about in L.A. sometime after this. But back then you have and that was probably, I think that was the first mass shooting, mass murder in the United States.
And it's hard to imagine cell phones not being around, not having any communication,
Right.
with the outside world, if you will.
Yeah. I want to touch on something real quick because I could tell the emotional impact it had just by mentioning his name. One of your coworkers was hit and died that day.
Billy Speed.
Did you know him?
He was on my shift.
Yeah.
He left his wife and 2 boys behind.
Yeah.
How many civilians in law enforcement were hit that day?
How many what?
How many civilians were injured or shot and police officers
there
injured
was,
or shot?
30 people injured, 14 killed, and 2 more, his wife and his mother, the day before he had stabbed them to death.
That's right.
In their bed. So overall, that whole activity was like 16.
How many police officers?
1.
Billy Speed was the only?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I thought there was more.
No, it was Billy Speed.
And he was on the ground, arriving, I guess, similar to what you did when he got shot?
Well, I don't know. I kind of read some of the stuff there, and it said that he was approaching, the tower, and he got shot. But I heard at that time that he was behind a wall that had the rock or whatever staggered and had openings in between the rocks and stuff. And Whitman, he was an ex-Marine. He qualified expert, and I heard that they had shot him through the wall, but I've also heard that he was running up the mall there. And
Right.
So they come in and tell you, hey, they need you in the tower. You go up there. There's some folks that don't know the war is not over, and they're still taking pot shots, so you
still
retreat
shooting.
back.
Yeah.
Where'd you go from there? What'd you do?
Well, we sat out there for a minute until they quit firing, but they didn't do it. So I went ahead and left because they had plenty of people,
The cavalry showed up probably with them.
The ambulance and all that stuff, they had stretchers. They went out there and loaded him up. But, he was shot with buckshot. So he was dead. Wasn't even worry about him coming to life.
Good.
So 22-year-old kid involved in the first mass attack, mass murder incident, sniper attack in the United States. You just get in your car and get back on patrol?
Well, my shift was over, and they wanted everybody to write a supplement to it, but I'll just leave it at that. There's a reason I didn't do it, but I think it was maybe 10 years later, one of the major networks showed that picture of myself, shooting out of the window, and I wrote him a letter and explained who I was and tried to get the picture, and never did hear anything from him. And then another 10 or 20 years later, a newspaper came out with the picture, and I wrote Austin American Statesman about getting a copy of it, and never did hear anything from him. So that bothered me for years, and every last Wednesday of the month, there's several policemen meet and burn it and break bread together. And we went over there one time, and I asked them if they knew anybody that may have access to some of the documentation from the tower incident. And they said, well, they had a resident historian, if you will. It's been so many years. And I said, what? Does anybody have his name and his phone number? And they did. And I got home that night from down at Burnett and gave him a call and described the picture. He said, yeah, I've got it right here. So I says, "What would you send it to me?" He said, "Yes, I will."
But what's cool, interesting about that, you didn't know your photo was taken that day.
No. One of those students took the picture, and I don't know. I guess they turned it into the police department or something. I don't know how they ended up getting it.
So from the summer of '66, roughly what year was it that you're watching TV and yourself pops up
Probably
on it?
about 10 years.
So you had no idea you were photographed. 10 years later, you're watching TV and you're like, wow, that guy looks really familiar.
Well, no, I recognize it.
Well,
And,
yes,
you
but
know,
I was joking, but you're like,
recognize it.
that's me on TV.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, I don't know, it was
What was that like?
kind of flashback type deal.
Yeah. Well, because you just said something that triggered me. You didn't write a supplement. So many, and we won't dive on the why. But what I'm saying is that
Well, I'll tell you why. To write the supplement, I would have had
exposed your guy.
Yeah,
Yep. And you didn't want to do that.
no.
You just left it as who was that masked man?
Yep.
As politically motivated as the administration was, and me being a newbie,
Yep.
and you know, I was afraid, even though there was felonies being committed, and you know, the guy's justified in shooting, so was I justified. I didn't want him to have to go through all that.
Let me ask you something, and we can edit this out. When you saw that photo, being the fact of you trying to protect the citizen, you being a 2-week officer, we know how police work can be somewhat of a hazing profession. Was it almost like, that's my confirmation that I helped out? That's my confirmation that I was there, and that was my confirmation that I did my part. And that's why you wanted to have it for that reason, or was it just because it's honestly a badass picture and
Part of history. I mean,
for
it's-
history.
It was me, and you know, I wanted to have the picture because I was involved in something that was a first.
Yeah.
And I guess pride more than
Yeah,
anything.
100%.
I don't know if I'd been able to sleep for a few days if I'd have been sitting and
Well,
watching my picture
you
pop
know,
up.
the
And
thing of it is, it's like it happened yesterday, and that's been 57 years ago. I recall, you know, all of the particulars of it, and I wanted the picture, I guess, to kind of verify it, bona fide, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where I was going a while ago with 22-year-old kid. Luckily, you had guard experience to give you some tools to manage with it. But you're involved in the first sniper mass killing in America. And then shifts over and you just go home.
Yeah.
You're supposed to figure out how to
Yeah.
how do you manage,
they-
juggle, figure out how you navigate through.
They did not have any kind of
Mental health.
mental self. Or
No.
nothing. And I'm fortunate, I guess, that I had the military experience because I qualified expert with the rifle, but I had a lot of experience in Lampasses hunting.
Yeah.
But went home that afternoon. You were there 2 or 3 hours. Went home because your shift was over. Waymon goes home. Then you get up the next morning and go right back to work like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know if that PTSD or whatever they call it or whatever, why I still remember it, you know, like it was yesterday. I don't know if it's
It's probably seared into your brain. There's some images you just won't ever.
yeah.
But that's incredible. It's sad. We've evolved. But to be involved in something like that, that'd be like being at the World Trade Center and then at the end of the day going, well, I'll see you in the morning. See you back at
Yeah.
work in the morning. Long day, but
Yeah. Thank you
See
for your
you.
service, but
was there ever a debrief? Did anybody ever call you in?
No.
Hey, how are
No.
you doing? Or
No,
just get on the
such
horse
thing.
and
Yeah.
But our
Get on.
profession has grown so much since, especially since you were, beginning then. And we talk about this on a regular basis about mental health and about how law enforcement's grown and evolutionized, just thanks to the military for the mental health aspect. But I couldn't imagine going through something like that, losing a fellow officer on your shift, and what he left behind, and having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And we had an officer with Beaumont. His partner was killed in a vehicle accident, and they had, officers with him 24/7, I think, for several days after the fact. And it's just a testament of I think, where we've grown and how much we need to grow moving forward.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's still a work in progress, but it's getting better. But back then, it wasn't acceptable. But that's the only thing everybody knew.
Nobody did anything about it,
Right.
Yeah. They learned so much.
Do you think when you check back in service the next day, did it cause you to view your job, your role, how you carried yourself differently? Because you're a super grounded guy. I mean, you're as grounded, humble as you are. Or was it just kind of like, well, that was a horrible freaking day, but I'm going back to work? Do you feel like it changed? You were different?
Probably more cautious. You take for granted, that just a job, but there's potential is there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole lot to be forced to learn at the age of 22. You got an old crusty guy that's been around 20 years and been in shootings, and maybe that's not as devastating, but 22-year-old kid, that's a whole lot to be thrown at one time.
Yeah, and you just like walking up the staircase or going out into the lobby up there with blood everywhere, and bodies laying there. So
he had assassinated basically the secretary, and I think there's a couple of tourists that was in the stairwell.
Yeah.
And just assassinated people.
Man. So you finished your career, obviously, with Austin PD. Many years after that? Or?
I left. I worked there for 9 years, and I went to IBM. The retirement system, until the state took it over, it was pretty much non-existent. There was, like I was talking about Sergeant Fisher, he had food stamps after he retired. And IBM had better benefits once you retire. And so I went to IBM and worked there for 21 years.
Yeah.
So I want to hit on transitioning away from Coward Whitman. On this show, and it's a theme that we've not been intentional about really at all, but it comes up almost on every episode, is young people being affected. Well, I'll say we take for granted as cops the effect that we can have on people. And even when I was younger, I'm like, man, community policing, that's stupid, man. But it's been a theme on our show almost over and over now.
Yeah.
The impact that somebody can have on a young person's life. We had Aaron Slater, owner of Relentless Defender, on that said he was down and out on his way to just being a thug, and a cop took an interest in him, a legit, sincere interest in him, and it turned his life around. And Slater's an immensely successful, wealthy, successful national figure because one officer took a second to spend a moment with him and care about him. And you had the opportunity, was that early in your career, midway in your career? Share with our listeners about.
Are you talking about the association with Bruce?
Yes, sir.
He was in high school, and he, according to his daddy, he said he wasn't interested too much. And there was 3 of us policemen that befriended him and gave him direction. He ended up, getting through high school, and his dad thanked us for influencing him. Well, he'd gotten a job, he was accepted to play to be a guard in Huntsville, and we encourage him, don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're around nothing but crud of the world. And, go to work down at the police department. And so he went, and he's gotten his master's degree, and he's been the assistant chief. He's been the chief. He's in several different places, that they put him to work as their chief. And he's just a good kid.
How old were you when you were kind of mentoring and trying to help him?
Well, there was three of us, and we're all about the same age, and it was probably 26, 27.
And he's 15, 16, 17, high school kid?
Yeah.
And y'all go to a call on his house? What made his dad reach out and ask if y'all could?
He worked at Sage out there, and we met him out there, and he just, good kid.
And you guys influenced him, and look at him today. It goes exactly back to, community policing is not something new to law enforcement. It's always been around. It's just been highlighted recently because of the anti-law enforcement rhetoric. But that's just confirmation that, good people are going to continue to be good people. Yeah. It doesn't make a damn if you're a cop or a fireman or, the local meat market guy. Good people are going to be good people. And it's just confirmation that, again, law enforcement's always had community policing. We've always had an influence on everybody, and it's just sad that the anti-law enforcement rhetoric kicked up here recently. This is what needs to happen.
Relationships,
right.
Yeah.
Relationships, communication is community policing.
Yeah.
It's been around forever. To your point, Dad worked at Dallas. Said in the 60s and 70s, there's a legendary captain there named Will Fritz. Captain Fritz was a legend. And Dad said, like in 70 or 72, they had like a deployment working robberies, carjackings. And he said he goes upstairs, and it happened all the time, but he said he goes upstairs one day, and Captain Fritz said, "What are y'all working on?" He's like, "We got two guys that are robbing everybody, and what do they drive?" Well, they're in a maroon Cadillac. Well, that's going to be, one of them is going to be that Washington kid. And Dad said, "We've been chasing them for weeks. We can't catch them. Nobody will cooperate. Family won't cooperate." Captain Fritz picks the phone up, dials a number from memory. "Miss Washington, Captain Fritz down here. Your boys are up to no good. They're getting in trouble. I don't want to have to loose my dogs on them. So if you go ahead and bring them boys down here, I won't loose my dogs." And Dad's like, for 3 weeks we chased their ass all over Dallas. Captain Fritz calls Mrs. Washington. Miss Washington loads them up in her car and drags them up there and hands them to Captain Fritz. And Dad's like, "We chased them for freaking 3 weeks." Well, that's community policing.
That's right.
He had a relationship.
100%.
He had built respect. He had built collateral with her that she trusted. When Captain Fritz called,
Yeah.
"I'm going to drag my kids up there and turn them in to the police."
And most likely that goes back to his patrol days, too.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure that's exactly how he was on the beats in Dallas and so forth. But, yeah, community
That's
policing.
1970,
Exactly.
71. That's community policing.
That's right, 100%. 100%. Well, did we ever figure out, because I'm not as familiar with the story as you are, and especially you, what was the motive behind Whitman doing all this?
I'm not sure there was a motive. I think he just they laid it off someday. He had a tumor, but it never has been proven that that's what it was. I don't know, pressure, I guess, as far as lack of success in college might have.
Why he chose UT?
Oh, that's right. He'd gotten thrown out of college and was kind of just turning into a flunky, I think.
He'd gone into the Marines, but then he came back and was going to go to school, but he wasn't doing too well.
Us Marines aren't very smart sometimes.
I wasn't going to say that, but I'm not a Marine, so I can't.
I'm not going to say anything.
I hope you didn't bring any crayons. Yeah.
Would we not hit on?
It's pretty much, I think, covered the thing pretty well.
How old are you, Waymon?
I'm 79.
You're 79 years old. You were a policeman for the city of Austin, obviously, for 9 years.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I always like to touch on this, and I always like to stay. If I know someone has served, and you know, what's sad is the fact that military, God love our men and women who serve in the United States military. They do remarkable things daily. For the most part, it's unseen because they're not amongst, you know, the civilian life. But when policemen serve their communities, and what I said earlier about you retire, you did retire. You didn't get back into law enforcement, but you're not, you know, quote unquote retired because you didn't have that retirement at the end of your stuff with Austin PD. And so, for instance, veterans who serve 4 years, 2 years, however long, they're considered veterans from that point forward. So you're a 79-year-old man that served the city of Austin as a policeman. And I think it's so important for us in our generation to, number one, highlight that. Number two, thank you for your service. And have these type of discussions. Because your career is not defined by that newspaper. Your career is defined by 9 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Austin. Just like your success story by you talking to that young man that day, that's just one of so many lives that you had an impact on in 9 years. And so from a guy that was in law enforcement for 20 years and now serves with Tmpa, thank you. I think it's important, again, for the listeners out there to stop and do that when you know that somebody has served, retired. Waymon's generation needs that. And I think it's important for us to start recognizing that and doing more of a job of that.
Well, and it's a testament, too, that a lot of young people, I think, can take a lot from. Because I've known you for 15 or 16 years, probably, 17 years. A lot of this I didn't know. And to know the quiet, humble guy you are, you went on with life. His family's sitting in here, raised a beautiful family, and he didn't allow this to define him. He didn't allow it to break him. He's managed. We all figure out our way to manage through it. But to go on and have 3 kids, beautiful wife, a marriage that's lasted 56 years, which is unheard of, unfortunately, now.
Yeah.
I think it's a testament. There's a lot of 22-year-old kids that could learn a whole lot.
Yeah.
From what has gone on and things of our, what is it, if we don't remember our past, we're doomed to repeat it, or we're doomed to repeat it. There's a whole lot that has been laid as a foundation from the generations before. And Waymon, I've always respected. He's just like the quiet, humble hero, because that's some real man, tough shit that went on that day.
100%.
And he's as good as they come.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched the Blue Grid episode, and I'm not going to be upset by this because you probably never drove what I like to highlight my vehicles, but we always like to end the episodes with 3, what do you call them, rapid fire questions?
Rapid fire questions.
Are you ready? Did you study for the questions?
Yes.
You did. Did Clint let you in on the secret of what to answer?
I don't know what you're going to ask.
Okay. So the 3 questions. Question 1.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're a cop. You're supposed to, right? What's your favorite line from a cop movie or cop movie?
Make my day.
Make my day.
That was Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a guest on Wednesday. It's like,
Yeah.
I think "Make My Day" is my line.
Yep, 100%. And then what was your favorite patrol car you drove during your time of service? Or what's your favorite police car?
As far as the performance, other than when you turn the corner, the thing would die, was the 69 Ford. Had, 429 in it.
It's a Ford, though? It's a Ford, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had a Plymouth early on, and not the Belvedere with a 318 or whatever it is we had off the high wind. But they had some pretty good running Plymouths.
Just so we're clear, they didn't have Crown Vics back then.
Well, yeah, it was. That 69, it was a nice car.
Yeah, but it was a Ford. Clint loves Chevy Caprices, and it's kind of become a little battle between he and I.
This thing, I got after a burger one time at this Mute's Pharmacy. Every time I turned the corner, the car would die, and that's that carburation on that Ford. But
we were doing good, Waymon. Let's move on to the next question. I don't want to talk about Ford dying in the middle of the.
So was it 3 on the tree?
No, it's automatic.
Automatic. Have air conditioning?
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I got to tell you a funny story about Dallas PD and about air conditioning. I forget the guy's name, but he taught our academy class, and he said that the first write-up he ever got in his police career.
Cookie?
No, he went on to be they called him Dr. Doom. The guy looked really. I'll leave that. Yeah, I'll leave that alone. But his first write-up with DPD, he didn't have any AC air conditioners in the vehicle, and I guess there's an ice plant in Dallas, and so him and his partner had the idea. Well, by God, they've written letters to the sergeant, the lieutenant, the captain, and nobody was listening to him. So he said, "The hell with this," and put around the back seat of the patrol car. And every day during summertime, they'd go by that ice plant, get a big ass block of ice. Them some bitches had AC. You hear me? So they leave the windows rolled down, and that was his first write up. So all he got was a write up. So it wouldn't happen today. It wouldn't happen today.
Awesome.
What's your favorite drink of choice? Water. Okay. All right.
Or Blue Moon with the whole orange.
I love some Blue Moon. Man, you got anything else?
I appreciate you coming down. I've wanted to do this for a long while. Oh, there's going to be photos that pop up. Several years ago, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, a friend contacted me and said that he had bought Whitman's Arsenal in an auction. I reached out to Lewis family asking if that's something that he would want to see. Would it not be? He did. So we got to take Whitman's Arsenal. I didn't know the story of him shooting at the weapon, trying to take it out of battery. We show up, we're unpacking Bowie knife, transistor radio, I think a pistol, a couple of rifles, a shotgun.
About 4 or 5 pistols.
And pull a rifle out with a round through the barrel. And he's like, I see the lights go off, and that's how I learned the story of him trying to shoot at weapons to take the battery. So there'll be images we'll show.
It's awesome.
Of him shooting at Whitman, and then him a couple of years ago holding the rifle that was shot that day.
That's badass.
I thought we better explain those pictures when they pop up of how that occurred. How was that? Was that weird?
Well, I never knew it. I knew it fired at it. Didn't know it was hit. I noticed it taking it down.
Was it surreal seeing them, holding them?
I would have liked to have had the rifle just for keepsake. He was wanting way too much money for the rifle. I've got a picture. It's a whole lot cheaper.
Yeah. So that explains the pictures. I thought we better explain how in modern time he's holding that.
You got anything else, brother?
I got nothing.
Man, thanks for coming down. I always like meeting new friends, and I think we came here as strangers and we're leaving as friends. So thank you again. Thank you for your service to the citizens of Austin. Thank you for your service in the military, and you got a wonderful family. So thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Man,
I
you
wanted
guys
to do this a long time, and thank you for Lewis family for being not but great friends also, but for making sure this happened and you guys got to come down.
100%.
Well, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Love you guys dearly.
Yep.
Same.
You guys stay safe out there. It's getting to where it's in the winter months, and typically that's when we see an increase in violence against law enforcement. So stay safe, and as always, may God bless you and God bless Texas. We're out.